I've been wearing this style of work boot, 8-inch high, brown in color, mock toe, speed hooks, since I was 19 years old and started in construction, and maybe sooner. I did a video about that. But what I'm going to do now is tell you what my decision has been over the last 5 years since I made that video, because Sears diehards are extinct. Now, not exactly extinct, but the price point has changed with the new manufacturer. And so I've had to find an alternative solution, and I think I'm ready to tell you what and why I've selected the boot that I've selected for moving forward. So boiling this down on the front end is kind of a spoiler. The question for me now is it Carolina or is it Thorogood as the go-to boot for a carpenter? All right, so facing reality is part of being an adult. These boots are not available at the same price point as they were for the 30 years that I used them. But these boots are Carolina, Thorogood, and I'm going to spoil it here and tell you that these have become my go-to, and now let me tell you why. After I put up that last video, Carolina sent me a pair of boots. It wasn't these, but it was a darn good pair of boots. I put them on and I was delighted with how comfortable they were and how well they fit. The toe box was extra wide and it felt good. So I used them. I worked in them. I built most of that spec house wearing that pair of boots that Carolina sent me, and I was vastly pleased. But as anticipated, the sole, which is just a white crepe sole, melted away. I burned through the sole on those Carolinas and I got them resoled. And it wasn't long after I went through the drill of resoling those Carolinas that my feet began to hurt. My solution to that was order another pair of boots, and I did, and I paid for them. I was happy to pay for them, and I wore them and they felt good for a while. But then, for whatever reason or combination of reasons, and I think it was because the wide toe box stretched out a little more and got a little wider, and it kind of let my foot down and my feet started to hurt. Didn't like it. Now, aside from that, the construction was great. Can't fault it at all. The stitching, the leather, the laces, the hooks, the made in the United States mostly, was top-notch. They're a very respectable boot. And if my feet wouldn't have started to hurt in them, I'd still be wearing them, even if the sole was not durable. But I broke down and ordered a pair of Thorogoods, mostly because I could hear the passion in the voices in the comments section saying, Thorogood all day, Thorogood union made, Thorogood made in the United States, Thorogood, Thorogood, especially you iron workers. Apparently there's a real cult following of Thorogood boots in the iron worker community. So I ordered a set. Pretty easy to order. They showed up. They fit just as good as the Carolinas, but they had a narrower toe box. The construction was very similar. Had triple stitching in the same places, double stitching in the same places, similar or identical grade of leather, the band around the top. It all was very, very similar, except the narrowness of the toe box, and they had something similar to the die-hard sole on the bottom of the white crepe. Some kind of a urethane or something, and I thought, maybe. So I've got now probably 9 months of an old man's wear on these boots, and the sole is holding up. It also is just as grippy on a roof as the die-hard was. It's just as comfortable to wear, and my feet stopped hurting. So let me just point out here that whether or not a boot hurts your feet is less a function of the boot construction than the construction of your foot. I've got a long, narrow foot. I'm a size 10.5 or 11. It's a D. I'm a narrow D. I have a low arch. I'm not quite flat-footed. My brother is. But I leave a regular footprint on the shower, on the bathroom floor after the shower. But it's a low arch. And I've had plantar fasciitis, and so, I'm an old horse and I'm going lame. So whatever bearing that has on this boot, the toe box has not stretched out. The sole is what it needs to be under the ball of my foot. The top is high enough, the ankle is comfortable. It's not that waterproof, but it's kind of waterproof. We're going to address that right here. It shows no sign of any failure in the lacing, but neither did Carolina. So for all of these reasons, and the fact that the width and the profile feels more sort of finished to me. I feel like if they're oiled up and they're cleaned up and I walk into a meeting or sit down for an interview or I'm standing in front of a camera, I feel like my feet are presentable and I don't look like Jed Clampett just falling off the turnip truck, right? The advantage of an 8-inch top is it keeps the dirt out of your boot. The advantage of an 8-inch lace-up speed hook top is it supports your ankle. The advantage of a mock toe is it looks good and you feel more of a businessman than just a construction laborer, even if you're a construction laborer. There are some disadvantages around waterproof and the fact that the beads, the sparks from your welding will burn through these laces, but forget that. It's worth whatever you have to give up to have a pair of boots that look as good as these and work as good. The stitching is almost overkill and it's neatly rendered. It's not bulky, it's not coarse. The lines are parallel and straight. You've got 3 layers of stitching where you need them, 2 where it is adequate, and in all cases, it's done by somebody who knew how to do it. So these are similar boots. I mean, like very similar, and they're at a very similar price point. And it's way more than the old Sears Die Hard was, but so what? That was then, this is now. So they're 200 and change. And as I've watched them, I mean, one goes up, one goes down. These guys are competing head to head, and they should. And before I sign off here and put a little grease on these boots, and they've earned it, they need it, they don't get enough of it. Before I do that, I'll just say that you really can't go wrong with either one of these. They're good shoes, but for all the reasons I've mentioned, width of toe box for my feet, durability of the sole, as far as I can tell right now, it'll be a pair of boots just about like these, if I'm lucky, that I'm wearing on my last day. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work. So I grew up using Hubbard's boot grease and stomping around in the woods and fishing and cutting wood and doing the chores that my dad assigned. I brought in the firewood every day from the time I was 6 years old, so I got outside. And I didn't like wet feet any better than anybody else, and my dad used Hubbard's on his cork boots, and then later when he worked in a mill. And so Hubbard's is what we use. And when I lived in Las Vegas, I was shopping. I think it was at a Smith's grocery one time, working in the desert. And at the end cap of an aisle, there was about 40 cans of Hubbard's boot grease in Nevada. I couldn't believe it. And so I grabbed a couple cans and I went up and I checked out. It was a cashier that I think, it was a short line, right? I usually don't make that bet successfully, but it was a short line. And when I walked up there to be checked out, I had some milk and some bread and the things you need for little kids, probably diapers, and this can of Hubbard's. And the clerk scanned, it was before scanning, she entered the amount on the can of Hubbard's and she said, "My dad and my brothers used this stuff." I said, "Really?" "Well, my dad did too." She said, "Well, where did you grow up?" And I said, "In Oregon." "Really? Where in Oregon?" I said, "In Glide." And she looked up at me and she screamed. She screamed and she said, "I know you!" And I said, "Are you Vicki Jameson?" And yeah, it was Vicki Jameson, working at a Smith's in Las Vegas, probably 20 years after we graduated. And her family worked in the woods, worked in the brush. My family did too. We, I think, had been sweet on each other in junior high. And it was a thing I'll never forget. Went home and told Kelly. She was shocked, she was stunned, and we were grateful that, you know, whatever it is in this world that sometimes closes these loops, and I think that sometimes it is divine providence. It made just a nice little interaction, and it was all provoked by the humblest and most effective of boot greases, Hubbard's boot grease. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman. Keep your eyes open for your old friends and keep up the good work.